I love this cartoon. It always makes me laugh. And yeah, I don't like the cost of vinyl. And that's going to be one thing I talk about here on my 5 things I hate about vinyl. The inconvenience isn't one of them, unless you're talking about the time spent communicating with different companies and mailing things back due to crappy pressings. That certainly is inconvenient. Never remember taking CDs back except for one. I think I had Towns Van Zant live at the Old Quarter, and the CDs were identical. I think it was just disc one repeated twice instead of having disc one and disc two. I remember taking that back. Other than that, I do not remember having issues with CDs and having the inconvenience of having to return them that like I do with vinyl. Not no, it's not even comparable at all. But I've been thinking about this a lot. 5 things that I hate about vinyl. Price, as I've alluded to, and it's funny because I wasn't really going to include price. I thought about not including it because if you adjust it for inflation, or at least I've read this from the 80s to now, you're actually getting a better deal than you would have in the 80s for vinyl. But I think that's an average. It would have to be. The big difference between now and then is if you went into a record store in 1988 and you bought a record, you wouldn't see another record by the same artist or some other artist you were interested in that would be priced $10 more for the same single disc. If it was a double disc, you would, but you wouldn't see that. I didn't. Records were what, 88, probably maybe 11.99, 10.99, probably still for sale. 88 was kind of getting more into CDs, but let's humor me for a minute. That you would get one for 9.99. You didn't see another one priced for 22.99, a different band that you liked, just because they decided that they were going to price it differently. So there's really no standard on price, which bugs me. I like the labels that you can buy a record for $22. You still see those, but then sometimes you'll see a single record by some other band, no gatefold, nothing special, that'll be high 30s if not 40s. It just gets really ridiculous. And I almost wasn't going to bring up price, except I was reminded yet again when I saw that the new slash old Beatles slash John Lennon demo, 2 songs, a single of that was priced at $18.99. I mean, if that's not outrageous, and it was just the standard one. I don't think it was any like special version of the single, because I'm sure there's tons of different ones you can collect if you are so inclined. But yeah, price. Why isn't there a standard on price? There used to be. Anyway, so price bugs me about vinyl, especially when you get into used vinyl too. I did a whole video about that, how record stores are just getting so expensive for their used vinyl. It just pisses me off because it takes the joy out of going to a record shop, which is the hunt and thinking you're going to find something cool. And yeah, I guess just the age we live in, it's all been looked up on Discogs, and everybody knows what they're putting out there. So it's unlikely you're going to find a real gem. But it gets really obnoxious when just your standard run-of-the-mill records are priced at $20 or close to it, or even more, for used records. So yeah, that price bugs me. Number 2 is quality, and they kind of go hand in hand in some ways. I mean, if the quality of these things was really, really good and you could count on it across the board, okay, you could maybe justify some of the prices, of course, but the quality seems to vary so much. And I never used to pay attention to where something was pressed, or what record label was ultimately responsible for it, and those kinds of things. I was paying attention a lot to like who mastered it and all that. But now I'm starting to get down a little bit more granular because I'm sick of mailing records back that are crappy. And I think it's one thing that's unique about vinyl too, because of this issue, is I can't tell you how many times I put on a new record, not usually something from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s that's used, And I'm like, is that in the mix or is that something wrong with the vinyl? And usually it's something wrong with the vinyl. Um, pull out the old CD if I have it, or pull it up on streaming, and sure enough, it won't be there. That's a real issue. Get your quality control. Like, put out products, make sure they're good. But it seems like everything's rush released and sometimes half-assed done, and it gets really annoying. So quality bugs me, the lack of. Um, Number three, snobbery. Is there uh, any other thing quite like vinyl? I don't. I guess I don't associate with stamp collectors and used book collectors, or I guess other kinds of collectors. Maybe it's just that mentality. But I just find it really annoying that it becomes one of these things where it's not about the music. It's about consumerism. It's material goods. It's all the different variations and all the different pressings and just people with unlimited disposable income, I guess. Fine. But, some kid who just, I don't know, discovered Dark Side of the Moon, don't go start telling them that they haven't really heard it until they've heard, the $350 version of such and such press from Japan in 1973. It's like, get off your high horse. I mean, I just find that stuff annoying, the snobbery around it. And it extends to stereo systems too. I had a conversation recently on a message board where I was talking about how much I thought that a vinyl pressing sucked, that it had no dynamics, that there was no presence there, that it was nothing like, what it was in 1990s, 1992, this one, when I bought it, how I had the CD for all those years, played the streams a couple times, even played the new remastered stream. But when I got the record, it sounded like crap. And instead of people going, and there were plenty actually before me that were complaining about the sound too, but I was dismissed immediately because I wasn't sharing all of my information about what I was listening to. So I didn't give them the honor of poo-pooing my stereo system and saying, well, you need something more like what I have. I've got a good stereo system, but I find that really annoying too. Like, oh, well, you haven't really heard it. And my reply is, when's the last time you had a hearing test? Or maybe we should give a neurological test too, because some people are just so way over the top of that. So the snobbery thing I find really annoying. Number four is FOMO, the fear of missing out. It's such a big deal with vinyl because I think a lot of us buy into this mentality that you're only going to see that thing once. It's been out of print on vinyl for 10 years and now it's back in print, but you better grab that baby now. And oh, that band used to be into back in 1985, you might be into them again, and when you are, you're going to want it on vinyl and you're not going to be able to find it. So you better buy this record. Oh, and another one of their releases was released on the same day, and two more come out a month from now. You better get all four of those because you just don't know, when they're going to be around again. In the 80s, in the 90s, in the 60s, most of the time, unless we're looking for something very independent, local, or an import, you knew you could find the thing again. You just go buy it. I don't remember ever having that issue with things that I bought where I couldn't find it unless it was like day of release or something and it was sold out. But you knew you could get it again. So I find that really annoying. I've heard that's getting corrected a little bit in this kind of post-COVID, sort of post-COVID world we live in, where this vinyl explosion happened when everybody was living at home or working from home and at their house all the time, and now everything's finally catching up with pressing plants and all that. I would like to believe that to the point where it can be like walking into a CD store in 1995, just a big one, and finding what you need and not being like worried that, oh no, I'm never going to see this again. I have to get this now, when you weren't even interested in it in the first place. So that's a big thing for me. I mean, the colored variants and all that, I don't get into that. I know some people do, and that's yet another, thing. It's like, oh, I better get that because that's going to be, gone too. I found that to be not so true with certain record labels have so much colored vinyl they can hardly get rid of it. Um, Number 5, no standards. So believe it or not, there are no standards for thickness of vinyl. You'd think like, okay, they talk about 180 pressings. There must be like 140 as a standard. It's just up to the record labels what it is. So sometimes you get like those, those Dynaflex type things from the 70s. Today, get really thin things, not quite that thin usually, but other times you can get a very, thick slab of vinyl. It just seems to there's no rhyme or reason about that. People used to really tout the 180s. I don't really see that as much as being a thing to get. But so yeah, thickness. But the one that really bothers me, and I know I'm not alone in this, is there's no standard for the hole size. So when you put a record on and it's like so hard to get off that you think you're gonna snap it right in half, you're like maneuvering it side by side slowly and trying to pick it up, and your whole turntable feels like it might get picked up with it, and you're afraid it's going to snap in two. Why can't there be a standard size? I haven't really had the opposite happen where you've got the hole too big and the vinyl just kind of swimming around every which way. That would suck. I haven't really seen that, but I've definitely wrestled so many records off the turntable. It just gets a little ridiculous. So that's it. Those are my main things. I mean, most of it comes down to just practices that didn't exist before, the pricing thing, like I talked about, and the quality, the lack of quality control. I don't understand why some people put out just bad product and let it go out to market. I really don't understand that. When you see complaints across the board about, residue from white sleeves on the record, or just everybody's complaining about how bad a pressing is, you had to know that. Somebody had to know that when they signed off on it. So I think that's just, you don't see that with a lot of companies that want to maintain a reputation of consistently putting out, questionable product. So anyway, I love vinyl. I like the inconvenience. I like sitting down with a record between two speakers and having something of quality that I'm playing, and I don't have to second guess. Is that an imperfection in the vinyl, or is that in the mix? That I can just trust that I'm hearing it good. It's the way it's supposed to be, and I can dive into lyrics and liner notes and just have a really good, dedicated listening experience. It gets rid of the oral wallpaper type thing we have going on. What most music has become for most people, never-ending playlists. You play an album, it just keeps playing, and there's just not that same kind of immersion that I think most of us like. So I'm not going to give up vinyl, but I think for me anyway, I'm going to start being a little choosier and do my research and try to control that compulsion also to buy something just because I'm worried I will never see it again. I hope that those times are changing and that won't be the case. But anyway, that's my rant. Would love to hear other people's thoughts. I did a video previously about used record store prices. I'm going to link that below. But that's all I got. Thanks, everyone.